Hey guys, welcome to the channel. Chainsaw Matt here. Today we're going to be looking at a BR-200. It seems to be having some issues, making a little noise. We're going to start it up for you, show you how it sounds, tell you what's wrong with it. Wow, that sun's bright today. As you can see, there's some grinding noise inside that shouldn't be there. So we're going to pull it apart and show you what's wrong with it. Be sure to subscribe. Give me a thumbs up if you like the video. Okay, so I think what's happened, I've seen this in the past. I think the main bearing, one of the main bearings is going out in this machine. It's the same engine as what's on the BG56 and 86. We see them every once in a while. Most of the time it's just from a lot of time on the machine. Doesn't have really to do anything to do with too much time on the machine. If there's a lot of dirt ingestion, you'll see these failures sometimes. We're going to check that out here in a second. Snuck up on me there. If I got this real quick. So, my colleague here, this is Ponzio.
What up, bro?
He actually pulled this thing apart and found, to begin with, that the flywheel was rusted to the ignition coil, and that's why the unit wouldn't actually turn over. Got it running, lots of smoke, and I'm pretty sure the bearing's coming apart now. So first thing I check usually is to see how much dirt ingestion it's got. This one doesn't appear to have any at all. So we're going to go ahead and pull it down. Look at the bearings. Check and make sure nothing else is wrong with it while we're in there. Piston sometimes will be scored up from the metal shavings inside of there. Take the carb off first, and then remove your fuel tank. Now we're going to remove the flywheel next. Before we pull the flywheel, I'm going to pull the muffler off just to make sure that the piston's not messed up already, because if it is, it may not be worth fixing. Oh yeah, that's real good. like somebody's either been in here already or it's just packed full of dirt. That screw's almost stripped out. Well, the piston looks good. Nothing visually wrong there. You can actually still see the machine marks in it. Let's see if I can get a good shot of that. Discoloration that you're seeing in there is actually oil buildup. That's what you get when you use cheap 2-cycle oil. We'll get a better shot of that once we get it torn down. So I've got a piston block here. This one is specific to BG5686, the 200, which is what we're working on today. FS56, FS70, lots of the smaller chainsaws that take the smaller plug. Pretty much everything that takes the small plug except for the 4-mix machines. 4-mix machines take the screw in. I'll put this part number in there, so if you need one of those you can order it. This is the plug. This is the CMR6H. It's a very small plug. This is an NGK. Most of them are the same as the smaller Bosch as well. So this piston stop just goes right in the top here. I don't think there's a specific side. You just stick it in, rotate your flywheel around till it stops, take your nut off. So they actually make a flywheel puller for this. There's the part number there. The only thing is these two holes that are in the flywheel, those two holes there, that one and that one, are not tapped. You actually have to tap them yourself. It's just an M5.8. Let's see if I can get that to focus in on that. This is a Irwin tap, 5mm, 0.8. We're going to go ahead and tap that so we can pull the flywheel. Pretty simple. I like simple. Be sure to check your keyway inside of there too when you pull the flywheel, just to make sure it's not broken or anything. That will happen sometimes when you get a catch in the engine. Next, we're going to take these 3 screws out. Here, here, and here. This will remove the plate. You can go ahead and take the ignition coil off as well. You don't have to. What I normally do is just take the wires off. Get them out of the plate. And you can do this once you get the engine off as well. Doesn't have to be in order. Okay, so that allows us to take the bottom engine pan off. You do have to remove the whole engine from the blower itself first, though. And to do that, there's 4 screws connected to the AV anti-vibration springs. And I believe to get to these next 2, you can just pull back the and it appears that I found some friends, unexpected friends. Lots of them. Uh-oh! See, this is the kind of stuff that you can't make up. You cannot make this stuff up. Lots of ants. Probably made their way in here to keep warm at some point. Don't know what kind of ants they are. Just black ants. Don't look like fire ants. I'm going to take this outside and try to get rid of these little pests. Alright, so we got rid of the ants. Kind of freaked me out a little bit, but we got rid of them. Next, we're going to remove the plastic screws for the housing. 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 screws. Go ahead and take your throttle cable screw out as well. That'll help. Look at there. There's one of the boogers now. Don't know why they were in there though. Not moving at all. Okay, so next we're going to remove this nut. This particular one is reverse thread, so you turn it to the right to loosen it. It's even got a little diagram there with the arrow pointing towards the way you turn it to get it off. Same thing, same piston block, same size nut as the flywheel, just reverse thread. This one's pretty rusty too. You can tell this thing's been sitting outside, looking by all the rust that's on the shaft there. So there should be a washer on the outside of the wheel and a washer on the inside of the wheel. Right there. And it's the same size washer, so you don't need to keep them separate. And we have 3 screws behind the fan wheel to remove the engine. Simple stuff. Okay, so usually I go ahead and remove the intake flange just to get it out of the way. Not necessary, but it makes looking at things a little easier. The first thing I notice now that I've got everything apart, this shaft is super hard to turn, which tells me we got a main bearing. Definitely got a main bearing out. Next, you got the 4 screws on the bottom of the engine. Drop that engine pan. These engines don't have a bottom engine pan head gasket or engine pan gasket. It's just made out of red RTV high temp. Alright, so first thing I'm looking at here is the piston, just to make sure there's no damage there. Doesn't appear to be. Got a little bit of wear on the intake side. Not bad. Exhaust side looks good. No score marks, no scratches. Well, there's our culprit. Right there. Main bearing failure. Let's get this in the light so you can see it. Like I said, don't know what causes this issue. We had a run on these a while back. We had several that went bad. Could be just the carrier itself. This one's pretty bad though. It's sticking pretty good. It's not even wanting to turn over. Typically the flywheel side is good. Yeah, see, that one's good. It is making a little bit of noise, which is probably just from the metal that's inside of it. But you can see a hole in that intake, or the fan wheel side. Those bearings are gone. So what we'll do with this one, I quoted the guy, I think it was $150 to rebuild, put new bearings on it, as long as everything looked good, and everything looks good to me. So we're gonna get these bearings, get some part numbers in there so you can see what we're doing, what we're using, and we'll go from there. Alright, so one thing I am going to do before I do anything else is we're going to take the piston off, just to make it easier to get to everything, because you can't really pull the bearings without risk of damaging the piston. So we've got our circlip removing tool. It's been modified from a small flathead screwdriver. Pretty simple. I just take a Dremel tool and cut a notch in the end of it. So there's two sides. You want to remove the circlip from the side that has this little cutout in the piston right here. The other side is just a solid hole. That's what that little hole is for, is to remove the circlip. Make sure you keep your thumb over this when you're doing it as well, because these clips will go flying and you'll be searching for hours to find it. Next, we're going to push our wrist pin out. I think you can probably use that same tool, just a little flat head, and push on the opposite side. It shouldn't be stuck or anything like that. But it could be. Once you get it started on the other side, you can just pull the rest of it out with a pair of needle nose or your trusty Leatherman wave, my favorite tool. So once that's out, go ahead and inspect your needle cage bearing. This is the bearing for the wrist pin. You also want to check your bottom connecting rod bearing, which is close to the crankshaft. Make sure it's not coming apart. Check for any bluing, purple discoloration on the connecting rod as well. This particular model has the forged connecting rod, where the BG56 has the carbon connecting rod. This is a little bit more heavy duty. We're going to go ahead and get the bearings removed off of the crankshaft. We'll show you how we do that. So I'm going to start with the bad bearing and pull it off first. I've got just a simple, this is a particular one is a Channel Lock brand. It's just a standard puller for Flywheel. I use it more for bearings than anything. It's got a small end, and then it's also got a bigger, wider end. We're going to use the smaller end for this application. So once you get the puller on the bearing on the crankshaft, you may have to heat the shaft here up just a little bit, so that it will slide off easier. I typically try to not do that if I have to. We'll see how easy it comes off. Looks like this one's coming straight off pretty easy. bearings off. Don't forget about this little washer. The bearing kit, it comes with 2 bearings and 2 washers. Just be sure and get that washer off as well. And if anything in a kit comes with the kit, go ahead and install it. These little washers probably don't go bad, but you may as well replace it if it comes with the kit. This particular puller, the nut that turns the threaded piece takes the same size socket or wrench as the spark plug on the machine, so makes it easier. Looks like this bearing's going to come right off as well. As you can see, there's a pretty big difference between the two.
Hi there, is anyone back there?
Yeah, I'll be right with you.
Okay.
So these bearings are visually, you can see the difference. This bearing is most likely okay. There's nothing wrong with it. You can see that bearing has pretty much disintegrated the carrier that's inside the bearing. It does spin, but it makes a awful racket. That's what we were hearing inside the engine when we were running it earlier. So here's the part number for the bearing replacement. This does come as a set of 2 pieces. Comes with 2 brand new bearings, 2 brand new bearings, as well as 2 new washers. And these are cupped washers. They've got a little bit of a bend to them. You'll want to put that bend towards the crankshaft itself. There's also a few other pieces that you could replace while you're in here. Stihl does make a gasket kit. This comes with the head gasket, oil seals, intake gasket, exhaust gasket, pretty much any gasket that's on the machine. There's your part number for that. And if you just want to replace the seals, which is typically what I do, on this particular one I'm not. These seals seem to be in very good shape, so we're just going to reuse them. Here's the seal number if you do decide to replace just the oil seal. So these bearings don't really have an inside or outside. I typically put the lettering for the bearing on the outside. This way you can actually see the lettering. Don't forget your washers. And then we'll just take our wrench, something like this that fits over the center of the bearing, hit it a few times and it'll press right on. just like so. Brand new bearing. Same thing for the other side. Washer on, and then your bearing. As far as reassembling goes, there's not much to it. I take a wire brush, maybe some brake cleaner, carb cleaner, clean all this up. I don't typically take this gasket off, this cylinder head gasket, just because when you do, typically it rips and tears. I'll just take a little bit of cleaner and clean up around the edge here. Blow out the cylinder with air just to make sure that there's nothing in there, metal shavings, anything like that. Reassembly is pretty simple. We're not going to go through all that, but we will give you a video of it running afterwards. One thing I will mention, before you reassemble this, make sure you put this spacer block on the crankshaft first before you install your piston, because there's nothing more frustrating than getting the piston circlip reinstalled for the wrist pin and then realizing that your block's not on there, and you have to take it all back apart, take your circlip out, risk losing the circlip again just to get this little block on. And don't forget to clean up the gasket material here and put fresh RTV high temp on it. And we'll just kind of give you a close-up of this piston as well. It's in pretty good shape. That black that you're seeing there is just from using cheap 2-cycle oil. It leaves a residue behind. And then that dull finish that you're seeing here is from not changing your air filter when you should. The rings are replaceable. I don't measure them or anything like that. Typically you'll be able to tell if it doesn't have enough compression when you go to start it, or just simply pulling the starter rope over is how I check for compression. Alright, we're gonna put our RTV on now. Got our circlip installed. Tool I use, and sometimes this works well, sometimes it doesn't. This is a circlip install tool by Stihl. You have the base number here, 5910 890 2208, and then you have the actual installer part here. This particular one, you can see the number there on the bottom. The way it works, you put the circlip on the end here. This is magnetized. You insert the circlip into here. The best way I found to do it is take a flathead screwdriver, or some kind of a screwdriver, and stick it in here and hold the circlip down against the magnet, and push it through all the way to here, and then pull this out and flip it over, push it the rest of the way through, and you actually push it into the piston itself. Pretty handy tool. It doesn't work as well as I'd like it to, but it does help, especially with these pistons, because the hole where the circlip goes is so deep. It's hard to get a screwdriver down in there to get the circlip installed correctly. So we're just using standard red high temp RTV. This is JB Weld brand. Haven't found anything that I don't like that JB Weld makes. Pretty good stuff. We're just going to put a generous amount on the engine pan itself. Doesn't have to be pretty, just enough to seal up that bottom end. Another thing, Stihl does not recommend reusing the head bolts. Don't know why. Personally, haven't found anything wrong with it. So before you put the engine pan on, I would go ahead and insert the piston into the cylinder. Another thing, make sure your block is facing the right way. To do so, just make sure that your port on your cylinder matches the block here and here. Get your piston in, just go ahead and push it all the way down to the block. Next, we're going to make sure that our seals are secured. You don't want those things coming out while you're running it. Air leaks are no good for 2-cycle. And then last but not least, we're going to put our engine pan with the RTV on the bottom end. There's also only one way this will go on. It's got a little ear here on one corner of the engine pan that sits right in the spot here, right there on your block. So you can't get that wrong. Like I said, Stihl doesn't recommend reusing these screws for whatever reason. I haven't found an issue as long as you torque them down real good, and that's what we intend on doing. The way I like to set this RTV is tighten these hand tight, and when I say hand tight, I mean just until the gasket material starts to ooze out the side of the engine pan, just like so. Do it corner to corner. It's not going to hurt to check your seals the whole time you're doing this as well. You see that gasket material starting to squish out, and you stop. So we'll do that on all 4 corners. I'll let the RTV set for about 20 minutes, and then I'll torque it down. So once we get everything back together, as far as the engine goes, engine pan torqued down, head bolts torqued down, we can go ahead and reassemble the entire unit. I typically put a little bit of 2-cycle oil in the intake side of the cylinder before I start it, just to help lube up the piston and everything. You don't want to do too much though, because you will get a lot of excess smoke. We're not going to go back through the process of reassembling the rest of it. It's pretty simple. You just reverse your steps from disassembling it. We're going to show you a video once we get it all together of it running, how it should sound and what even tune the carb if it needs to be tuned. So, put new bearings on it. Should have a nice smooth start. We're gonna choke it. We're gonna prime it. Is it snowing? I think it's snowing. I think you're crazy. I had my medicine this morning. I'm not crazy. As you can see, no grinding noises. Nice smooth start. Little smoke, not bad. Thank y'all for watching. Please subscribe. Give me a thumbs up if you like the video. And also follow my Instagram, Chainsaw Matt.